Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. Today, we'd like to discuss Headspace. While perusing the interwebs, we've seen a lot of confusion and bad information regarding Headspace. Where does that confusion come from? Well, let's put a little light on that subject. Headspace, in a firearm, refers to the distance between the bolt face and the point within the chamber that stops a cartridge from being inserted further. It's a critical measurement for safe and reliable operation of the firearm. Incorrect headspace can lead to dangerous malfunctions. For this discussion, let's look at the SAMI spec sheet for the 300 PRC. The chamber specification drawing calls out the internal dimensions forming a firearm chamber and sets the standard for machining tolerances required for safety and more. The cartridge specification drawing describes the external dimensions of the cartridge and sets the min-max tolerances as required to safely chamber that round. There's much to be gleaned from examining those spec sheets, but it's my belief we've already found where the confusion comes from. You see, headspace is just one component of these drawing sets, and most of the discussion out there in videos or forums regarding headspace is imbued with an attitude of headspace is something the machinist creates, or worse, we can adjust our headspace with our resizing dies. And that's where we go wrong in how we talk about it. We must either talk about the cartridge and do so with a clear understanding that we're discussing things in terms of external dimensions with a nod to brass thickness, datum lines, overall length and the like, or we must talk of the chamber in terms of internal dimensions and the considerations attendant to that set of measurements. But what we cannot do is talk about both sets of measurements simultaneously as if they are describing one entire item or thing, such as headspace. We have to remember there are two distinct spec sheets and talk of only one at a time. We must be cautious of how we speak. Words have meanings, and we have to use them properly. Cartridges don't headspace, period. Cartridges do sit inside of a headspace measurement in the chamber. Cartridges, when inserted into a chamber, index on some feature or facet of that case's design. There are 4 common ways cartridges index. 1. Straight-walled automatic cartridges such as the 45 ACP, 9mm, 30 carbine, and the like, index on the case mouth. 2. Rimmed cartridges, like the 45 long Colt, 44 mag, 22 rimfire, for example, index on the rim of that case. 3. Belted cartridges, like the 300 Winchester Magnum, the 7mm Magnum, 300 H&H, and many more, index on the belt. And finally, straight-walled, shouldered cartridges, including the 30-06, 223, 65 Creedmoor, and others, those index on the shoulder. None of them headspace on any feature of the case. They index. You see, cartridge specifications must allow for a bit of slop when chambering rounds from different manufacturers under different temperatures, and they have to account for dirt, grime, snow, water, anything that can be on the cartridge when it's inserted into the chamber. There must be sufficient room for the cartridge under normal circumstances, so the chamber is bigger than the cartridge, right? How much bigger? In what dimension is it bigger? See the problem? In the beginning of this video, we stated, headspace in a firearm refers to the distance between the bolt face and the point within the chamber that stops a cartridge from inserting further. And we'll stand by that. But let's take a closer look. In the 300 PRC chamber drawing, the distance from the bolt face to the datum line on the shoulder is shown as being 2.2 inches, plus 0.01 inch. And it's labeled as headspace, annotated by a circle with an X inscribed. That's the window in which this chamber and cartridge combination are engineered to perform safely. There's a minimum measurement of 2.2000, but could range from 2.2000 to 2.21000 and remain in tolerance. Notice that datum line is specified as being found along the shoulder, where the diameter of that shoulder measures 0.420. That's exactly how you find it. The cartridge drawing, however, shows no headspace annotation. Instead, it just has measurements from feature to feature with tolerances. If we vary too far from that SAMI headspace spec, we run into problems. Too short of a headspace measurement would prevent factory cartridges from chambering. The cartridge would be too long for the bolt to close completely. Conversely, too long a headspace measurement would leave the case flopping around in the chamber, leading to faulty ignition, poor alignment, overly stretched brass during firing, and slamming the case head into the bolt, which can let the magic out. It should be clear by now that we cannot set headspace by resizing our cases. In order to set our headspace, we would have to replace our barrel. Or in the case of actions like the Savage 110s, they use a jam nut on the barrel to lock it down. We would adjust headspace by threading the barrel further in or out of that action. In this drawing, we'd like to discuss that slop that we spoke of earlier. The SAMI drawings also allow for slop. If you read those drawings, it becomes clear that they're saying the cartridge can be longer than the chamber. When we machine a chamber, we have a lot to think about. It helps the machinist to know what the end goal is going to be, and he can fudge the numbers in favor of that goal. For instance, a competition or target chamber might be cut so the brass moves only a half-thousandth or so during firing. The target shooter can handle a hard bolt lift occasionally. But a hunting cartridge might move 5/1000ths or so to ensure easy extraction and chambering in wet, snowy conditions. While a combat chamber might allow the brass to move as much as 10/1000ths to guarantee the brass feeds and extracts no matter what. The target chamber will be the most accurate, at the cost of reliability during hard use. That hunting chamber works in almost all environments and maintains good accuracy with high reliability. And the combat chamber probably isn't as accurate, but it is guaranteed to run even in the most horrendous conditions. The machinist cutting those chambers can use the SAMI drawings and interpret the use case of the chambers to properly meet the user's goals. Some slop is both inevitable and desirable. That extra length allows the chamber cutting wizards to fudge the numbers to fit the customer's needs. But only up to a point. At that long cartridge measurement, the bolt will compress the brass while feeding, but with a lot of effort. It'll fire safely, but you can forget about reliability and magazine length. The SAMI spec sheet lists that long cartridge as a hard stop measurement. Past that extra long cartridge length in the drawing, the cartridge simply will not chamber, which keeps everyone safe. Back to our rifles. How do we set up our brass to fit our individual chambers, extending brass life and increasing accuracy? We start by removing the ejector pin and spring from your bolt, if you have that kind of bolt. We want the extractor in there to remove the case from the chamber, but we don't want the ejector spring pushing the case against the chamber wall and causing friction, which will distract us. We then insert an unsized fired case, fired in that particular chamber, and we feel the bolt close with friction on the now too large case. Noting that friction, we remove it and we resize that case just the least little bit that we can manage, and we retest the bolt closure thing. Resize and test, until our bolt drops with little to no friction, indicating that our brass has been resized down below the headspace interface threshold. To be absolutely certain we don't get hard bolt closures when the chamber heats up, we measure the base to datum line and subtract 1/1000th from that number to arrive at our custom resized shoulder bump. Now, the astute among you might notice that our off-the-shelf dies aren't really designed for mostly full-length resizing. This process of setting shoulder bump is really just a limited variance from the die manufacturer's intended adjustment position. We're not adjusting to touch or cam over against the shell holder like the manufacturer told us to. Remember that line on our resized cases indicating the end of the resizing stroke? What we've done is move that line up the web of the case just a tiny bit. We're no longer full-length resizing, we're mostly full-length resizing. If you really want to fit your brass to your chamber, you'll want a neck size. It's not perfect, but that's what neck sizing dies are around to do. Resize the neck only and push the shoulder back just enough to easily chamber the round. Some reloaders even set their shoulder to have a bit of cam resistance when closing the bolt, pressing the shoulder to the chamber wall. Our early 80s vintage Varmint Model 70 22-250 loves that kind of process with old school hollow point bullets. It also loves .002 inches of jump. Definitely not a hunting or field grade rifle or load, but my goodness does it shoot. It's the only rifle of ours that's predictably printed a .2 inch target. We're talking headshots on groundhogs at 350 yards. With modern chamber and cartridge designs, the benefits of neck sizing are all but gone. Today's tipped bullets with sleek seek and ogive profiles have made neck sizing nearly obsolete. Here's the theory. Some top performers have found that they get better consistency with full-length resizing compared to neck sizing, purportedly, due to the spring back of the brass being inconsistent. If your fired brass doesn't spring back all the same every time you shoot it, then you're stacking some inconsistency in with each reload. And I have to agree, it does make some sense. It's also good to note that if you do neck size, you will need to occasionally full-length size in order to get your cases to chamber well. That web area down low on the body, it does move and expand, so every 3 or 4 firings it needs to be scrunched back into line. So you can't just stop full-length sizing, right? So now you know a bit more about Headspace, and hopefully we can clear up some of the clutter on the web there and how we talk about it. As an end to all of that, let's just agree. We adjust our sizing dies to account for our chamber's unique headspace, to match our unique expectations for performance, and then we go focus on more important things, like perfecting our position against the rifle, or that ever-elusive perfect first shot. As always, we hope you'll join us in our next video, and thanks for watching.
Weevil is fun.